Hi everybody, it's me again. Thanks for coming back, it's nice to be here. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about autoimmune diseases in general and trying to piece together what connects these conditions. Why are they autoimmune diseases? And I think for so many of us, when we are initially diagnosed with these conditions, it's actually a massive relief, because along the way, having experienced so much pain and anxiety and stress, when you finally get a doctor to listen to you and go, okay, well, you know, we've run all these tests and we don't really know what the problem is, but, you know, looking at your list of symptoms, we think it's blah, blah, blah. In my case, fibromyalgia, to me, it was a huge relief, because finally someone had said, you know, I'm going to give this thing a name. So I just kind of went along with it. You know, I'm like a lot of people, I didn't really question my doctor, I didn't really think about it in that sense. It was just like, whew, oh my God, finally I have a name for this thing. I'm not crazy, which is what most people think they're starting to become anyway. And I think to be able to explain to people, to be able to explain to your family, to be able to explain to your work colleagues and say, you know what, I've been experiencing these symptoms because of this condition called fibromyalgia, called Lyme disease, called MS. Any of these conditions, you can now feel justified in your experiences, and people can start to be more empathic towards you, and just more understanding. If you have to miss work or you miss going out on a date with someone, people do understand a little bit more. So generally with the autoimmune conditions, after what I've been reading up on the NHS, I think generally the consensus is that the immune system is about something that goes around in your body and it's fighting bugs. That's it. Your immune system is there to help keep you well, to fight off any bacteria that you come across. So in the case of autoimmune diseases, it says on the NHS, which is our national health system, on their website, it says, however, if you develop a problem with your immune system, it can start to attack your own healthy tissues and organs. This is known as an autoimmune disorder. So that's it. This immune system kind of turns on itself and it starts fighting your own cells, your own tissue, apparently. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking at a number of these conditions, because being given that title of fibromyalgia, as I was explaining yesterday, so many people, as my condition got worse and worse, so many people on Facebook were there going, you know, this kind of sounds like Lyme disease. And I also know other people who have chronic fatigue syndrome and think, but you know, I don't really know what the differences are between these conditions. And I think that's it. Because you finally get given a label for your condition, you just kind of go, oh, okay, right, well, that's it. Tell me the drugs that I need to take, and I just have to kind of make the most of this situation and get on with life. For me, it wasn't enough. That was it. As my condition started to deteriorate, I really needed to look at what else could be going on here, because what I was seeing on the net with people with fibromyalgia was that, you know, people got ill and then it kind of levels out and you go along with this with these symptoms, but it doesn't necessarily become really, really bad. Obviously, I am generalizing here, so, you know, I'm just giving you an idea of what I was reading on the net. So for me to get to a point where things were getting so bad that I just had constant electrical pains running down my arms, and I could barely walk. I was saying yesterday, you know, I couldn't open a fridge door, I couldn't cut up my own food. This was kind of crazy. I was like, I don't know how bad this is going to get, but I am feeling terrible, and I'm going to struggle with my life if this is what I've got in store for me. So that was it. I started looking at the Lyme disease, which, you know, I spoke about briefly yesterday. But here we go. I have some pointers for you today. This is how organized I am. Okay, so Lyme disease, for those of you who don't know, Lyme disease is one of the autoimmune conditions that it is recognized. They do know what causes it. And they say it's by the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi. I'm not sure if that's actually how you pronounce it, but that's kind of what it looks like to me. So it is transmitted by a tick through a bite, so the bacteria gets into your bloodstream. So a kind of symptoms overview. Generally, a lot of people get a bullseye rash on their body. So for some people, it's kind of get to the doctors, try and get this figured out. So for a lot of people, even when they do go to the doctors, they don't know what it is, so they're not put on antibiotics straight away, which is what they need. Once they have the rash, or even if they don't have the rash, they have pain, swelling in the joints, numbness and pain in the limbs, memory problems, sensitivity to light. This is just a small amount of the symptoms. You know, for any of you Lyme guys out there, you'll know there's a whole range of symptoms, but these are the key guys. So the NHS, I have a little quote here. It says, a few people with Lyme disease go on to develop long-term symptoms similar to fibromyalgia or CFS. That's very confusing. You kind of think, why would you go on to develop fibromyalgia? Because if you look at these symptoms, you go, anyone with fibromyalgia will say, these are pretty much the same symptoms as fibromyalgia in the first place. And anyone with CFS would say the same too. So that is a little peculiar, but I just wanted to tell you, you know, what the NHS has been saying about it. So incredibly, at the moment, 3,000 cases in the UK, but they do estimate that it could be as high as 15,000. 300,000 estimated cases in the US. These are absolutely incredible figures. Okay, so this is Lyme disease. We know what causes it, and we know that there are various treatments, antibiotic treatments that do help with it. So we're going to be talking about Lyme disease again later on, but that's our little overview. Okay. Oh, my great friend, fibromyalgia. I just love having fibro. Yeah, this is the label that was given to my illness. And on the NHS website, it says, the exact cause of fibromyalgia is unknown. It also says, in many cases, the condition appears to be triggered by a physically or emotionally stressful event. There's a lot of thoughts about this, but I can say honestly that having experienced fibromyalgia for over 15 years of my life, for someone to say that it's triggered by a physically or emotionally stressful event is just like, it just wasn't. I know that. I knew it all along. I knew there was something else going on in there. And for a lot of us, you fibro guys, you know, we're pretty tough. We're tough cookies. And I consider myself to be a fairly mentally stable person. I'm a fairly emotionally stable person. So I think often with the autoimmune diseases, a lot of people find that, you know, when they read stuff like that, or when the doctor says, have you been having a hard time at home, dear? It's not just that it's patronizing, but it's it also makes you feel like you're being blamed for your condition. And that is something that I read over and over again with many autoimmune disorders, that people feel as if they are to blame for their situation. And you're just not. That's it. So the NHS really doesn't help with these kind of quotes on it. So on top of that, we've got, there's currently no cure for fibromyalgia. The symptoms, thinking about what I just said about the Lyme disease, it's like, whoa, okay, we've got pain, sensitivity, stiffness, fatigue, poor sleep, cognitive problems, the fibro fog. Any of you guys with the fibro fog? Oh my God, what a nightmare. IBS, all these things very, very similar to what people experience with Lyme disease. Very strong connection between the symptoms. Horrifyingly, this statistic here, 3 to 6% of the global population, according to the National Fibromyalgia Association, has fibro. 3 to 6% of the global population has fibro. Just have a think about that for a minute. Bloody hell. That's just a crazy, crazy statistic for something that we don't know the cause of. It's like, okay guys, right? You don't know the cause of it. Well, given that 3 to 6% of the population have it, I think we should be putting a bit more time and a bit more money into figuring out what the hell is going on with people who have fibromyalgia. It's a lot of people to be suffering with this condition. So there's our fibro overview. Next, we're going to be looking at the horrific condition that is multiple sclerosis. And if we go back to our fantastic NHS website again, you can see they say exactly what causes the immune system to act in this way is unclear. Wow, that's a real surprise, isn't it? We definitely see a link going on here. There's currently no cure, but it's possible to treat the symptoms with medication. So as we see with most of these conditions, we find that they are being dealt with steroids, like anti-inflammatory stuff. Sorry, I got a bit technical for you there. There is definitely, from what I've been reading on their website and what I've been reading on other pages as well, that there's not a lot of information to encourage people with maybe lifestyle choices, you know, natural medication, natural supplements. It generally does seem to be these are the medications that you should be taking, given by your doctor. So looking at alternative ways to treat these conditions is something that I'm going to be looking at with you, you know, over the next few videos. So again, the main symptoms, we've got fatigue, difficulty walking, vision problems, numbness, muscle stiffness and spasms. So there's going to be a whole bunch of you guys going, oh, well, that's kind of familiar. Yeah, fibromyalgia, Lyme disease. Again, real strong connection between these. Frighteningly, 100,000 people in the UK with MS. 400,000 in the US. I've got a feeling it's probably a little bit more than that. Terrible figures. Just, you know, it just breaks my heart to think there's that many people suffering with this condition all over the planet. Okay, we then go on to another condition that you might have heard of but you don't really know that much about, is a condition called lupus. So lupus, the NHS says, is a complex and poorly understood condition. Okay, well, if I'm just going to drop down here quickly to see these stats. 15,000 people have it in England and in Wales, and 1.5 million people have it in the US. Complex and poorly understood condition. Well, definitely I think we need to be putting more money into figuring out what the hell this thing is and trying to get a grip on it. Same again, there's currently no cure, but there are medications that can help. Main symptoms: fatigue, rashes, joint pain and swelling. Inflammation, again, is the recurring theme. Okay, we have rheumatoid arthritis. This to me is a very, very interesting autoimmune disease, and it's something that I will be referring back to a lot over the next few weeks. So I know this is really, really going to surprise you, but the NHS say it's not clear what triggers this problem with the immune system. Crazy, man, crazy. And again, there is no cure for rheumatoid arthritis. So the symptoms, this is crazy, pain, swelling and stiffness in the joints. Definitely a theme. Rheumatoid arthritis affects 400,000 in the UK, and it also affects 1.3 million people in the US. It's a lot of people in pain, and it's a lot of people having to pay for a lot of very expensive drugs. So not great at all. Okay, I know there's quite a few of these guys, but I want to cover at least the kind of key players in this, because I know for some of us it's like I didn't really know much about these conditions. They were just horrible names that I'd heard people say, oh, you know, my mother had MS or my sister has ME, and you kind of just don't know that much about them. So, you know, I really wanted to see if there was any similarities between these, and I think, as you can see, you know, they're all really quite familiar and similar. Obviously, because there are so many sort of variants, I think there are environmental variants, there are genetic variants. People's symptoms do fluctuate from one person to the next. So here we have CFS or ME, which is chronic fatigue syndrome. Oh, this is a hell of a mouthful, this one. Myalgic encephalomyelitis. Try saying that after you've had a couple of beers. So the NHS on their website, again, it's not known exactly what causes CFS, and there was no specific test. Now this is very interesting because the no specific test is the thing that comes up a lot as well. I know that when I was told that I had fibromyalgia, I'd had all manner of tests. It was like they were looking for the kind of key nasty things like different cancers and stuff like that. But the test for fibro is sort of to see whether you have these trigger points on your back. There's no specific blood test as such, and that is something that is another recurring theme throughout these autoimmune diseases, and one of the things that kind of confuses me so much between them, because, you know, I'm looking at CFS going, well, you know, these symptoms look very much like the rheumatoid arthritis symptoms, and, you know, they also look a lot like the lupus symptoms, and they look like the fibro symptoms as well. So I'd like to ask doctors, really, you know, how do you differentiate between all of these conditions if there's no actual blood test that you can use? So the symptoms, again, physical and mental fatigue, muscular joint pain, poor memory and concentration, insomnia. Now, any person who's been diagnosed with fibromyalgia will look at this and go, well, you know, maybe I've got CFS too. They're so similar, it's crazy. Again, very, very sad stats to see that 250,000 people with ME in the UK and an estimated 1 million people in the US, as well as the incredible amount of physical pain and stress that these people have to live with. You know, I think it's incredible to imagine the economic impact that it has. You know, and that for that reason alone, you think that the NHS, you know, and all the medical systems all over the planet would be putting a lot more time and effort into figuring out what causes these conditions, and, you know, if we can prevent them. So finally, I've got Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Now, the whole thyroid thing is massive, and it's something that, you know, we will pick apart at a later date because there's many variations on this. But again, the NHS website said the cause of Hashimoto's is not understood. That's just radical, isn't it? You wouldn't have called that one in. Also, Hashimoto's thyroiditis cannot be cured, so the low levels of thyroid hormone are usually permanent. So the immune system apparently attacks the thyroid, and the thyroid gets so damaged and it is irreparable. That is it. So the symptoms of it: fatigue, weight gain, constipation, dry skin, depression, and goiters. Oh, just sounds absolutely horrific. So I looked into Hashimoto's a little while ago because I was reading on the Dr. McCullough website, and I will be talking about Dr. McCullough again more throughout this little series. Hashimoto's is very much connected to fibromyalgia, and there's lots of reports on the internet about women who thought they had fibromyalgia, and then once they actually had a thyroid test, they found out that they had Hashimoto's, having either a hypothyroid or a hyperthyroid. So that's something else that we'll go into more detail at a later date. This is just a kind of overview, really. I think one of the things that I just found absolutely horrific about this was the treatment for it is either using a synthetic or pig thyroid hormone replacement. The thyroid hormones taken from a pig. I was like, I don't know what disturbs me more, that or a synthetic one. It's like either one's not very attractive. But also, frighteningly, my sister lives in America, and she was having problems with her thyroid, and she had a thyroid test, and after the first test they're like, oh yeah, you know, you definitely have a thyroid problem. We think probably the best idea is to remove your thyroid. Don't you kind of need your thyroid? It's kind of important. It's like someone saying, well, you know, you're going blind, so, you know, we'll just remove your eyes. Okay. Bizarre to think that that is like their first idea. Like, that's how they'll treat it. Secondly, what was even more weird about it was the fact that she had another test, and with the subsequent test, they said, oh, actually, we think your thyroid's okay now. This is after they've told her she'd probably have to have it removed. Just weird. Anyway, so 7 to 8% of the US population have some kind of thyroid autoimmune disease. 7 to 8% of the US population. Absolutely horrific statistics. So there we go. That was our kind of autoimmune overview. Hopefully for some of you guys who maybe didn't know about the Hashimoto's, or you hadn't heard of lupus, you can now start to see, you know, these connections between them. And the main connection that we see with all of these conditions is an inflammatory response. A lot of muscular pain, a lot of muscular spasms, a lot of joint stiffness. That seems to be the recurring theme. But for me, what was the biggest connection was looking at Lyme disease and going, oh, okay, we know for a fact that Lyme disease is bacterial. There is absolutely no dispute over that. And when we look at all these other conditions, we see very similar symptoms. So on the next episode, I am going to be looking at how we connect these conditions, and is there a connection to the infection? Connection to the infections. That's it. So please do join me for another episode. I will try and get another one up this week, and we will start looking more into how we deal with this inflammation and how we tackle all these illnesses. Okay? Have a fantastic weekend and see you soon. Bye.